Thomas Chabot, what an up and down season. Obviously, we hope that he's 100% healthy first and foremost. That did not look like a good hit he took. Just the way he went into the boards, missed the remaining games of the season, and now you're looking at 3 straight seasons where he wasn't able to finish the year.
Yep.
But a year as a whole, still played 68 games, which is the third most he's ever played in a single season. 11 goals, 30 assists, good for 41 points. How would you assess Thomas Chabot's season?
I think I voted. I gave him a C, but I'm inclined to be in the C plus B minus area because I just remember being very frustrated with Thomas Chabot at times. But I think that's one of those things where I just expect him to be at a certain level, and when he wasn't below that level, those games really stuck out to me. But then I started thinking the 41 points. He had some brilliant moments. That goal up against Tampa Bay, where I forget who he sets up, but he had a great play at the blue line. I believe it was Tampa Bay, but he had a lot of really good plays. He was nice on the power play, and the point totals definitely boosted up here. So I think it was maybe not the full season we wanted from Chabot, but I don't think it was as bad as maybe we are led to believe, just because we focus so much on the disappointments.
Yes, and that's fair. I think defensively there was a lot to be
Yeah.
desired at times where it just felt like they just needed him to take a step in his two-way game a little bit more. Transition game is obviously his bread and butter. Skating the puck out of the zone. Sometimes though, it just felt like you just want to. And I'm not saying he doesn't give effort because he's one of those effortless skaters where it might not look like he's breaking the ice every 5 milliseconds, like not chop chop chop. It's very long, controlled strides, but sometimes it just felt like it was like a half second too long, and you're just like, okay, let's snap it around. For me, the power play is really where you needed more from him at the top, and yeah, he can put it on a tee for guys for sure, and the zone entries are perfectly fine. But when it moves up to the top, and this is what we saw, and we'll get to Jake Sanderson a little later, and it's just you want to see the guy grab it and move it, grab it and move it. And it felt like it would come up to him at the top of the umbrella and it would just stop. And
Yep.
everything would stop. And it gives the defenders that extra second to set up as a posture, and then it takes away lanes. So I struggle. I'm probably at a C plus, like a hard C plus. I know you said B minus C plus. I just felt like you wanted a bit more from him in the role, right? It's almost like what Pierre Dorion said for DJ Smith, where it's like, hey, the last few years, it's about building, right? This year, it's about winning. And I just felt there were some parts of his game that I would have liked to see take another step forward. Now, the analytics look good, over 51%, both in the Corsi percentage and expected goals. I like that the time on ice is a little bit down. I mean, I could still use that to be 23, probably ideally, but it's down almost a minute and a half from the last 2 seasons, even 3. He hasn't played less than 25 minutes a game since 2018-19 when he was 22 years old. So I'm glad his minutes were down a bit. With a full season of Jacob Chikrin, you can expect that to go down another minute or two. And I think the best of Thomas Chabot is coming next season. So I'm hopeful. I'm not on the mind of that he's a bust or that he's overpaid yet. He made $4 million in salary, by the way. Weird anomaly of his contract. But Pillsy, I think next year we're gonna see the real Thomas Chabot. I hope so at least.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a changed role. You mentioned his ice time compared to when Jacob Chikrin arrived. I've got it here, Ross. In 11 games where Chabot and Chikrin played together, his ice time went down to 21:58. So we're looking at basically 3 less minutes average on ice when Chikrin was there. So, and that's kind of also when Jake Sanderson really started emerging as this team's number one guy. So I think with Thomas Chabot not having to be the Atlas guy holding the globe on his shoulders as the only kind of competent guy on this decor as he was for most of his career, he's going to be able to play a little bit more relaxed. He's going to be able to get better matchups, that kind of thing. And I think we are going to see an improvement to his game. So I'm excited to see how Thomas Chabot plays next season with Jake Sanderson being a true number one guy, in my opinion, and Jacob Chikrin also help lift some of that weight as well.
5 years left on his contract for Thomas Chabot at $8 million. per season. Thomas Chabot is quickly climbing the leaderboard. So, like this, obviously, he's the longest serving Senator right now. 381 games played. That's the most of any player on the active roster. Brady Tkachuk, number 2, and then you have to go a long way down to number 3. So, obviously, he's a guy who brings a ton of talent. And that's why I have a little bit of pushback to people who wrote on Twitter at Sens Central just saying like he should be a D or an F. And it's just like, come on, pump the brakes. I know that's versus your
Yes.
expectations, but this is still a top 4 NHL defenseman on any team in the league.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the thing. That's why I tried. That's why initially I was like, man, I didn't like Thomas Chabot's season, but then I took a breath, stepped back, and said, okay, it wasn't actually that bad. It just seemed bad because we're so focused on him not meeting the expectations we're used to. So yeah, I think the in between a C and a B is a great spot for Thomas Chabot this year.
What's the one area or thing that Thomas Chabot needs to work on from this year to next to allow him to reach that full potential?
Again, I feel like it's negative things that are sticking in my mind, but Ross, how many times did we see brutal turnovers in his own end trying to transition the puck? Like there was a lot of them, and a bunch of them led to goals almost immediately, or he got bailed out by his goalie. So that's the one thing where I think he's so used to having to do so much that sometimes he tries to do too much and he doesn't need to do that anymore. So just I need him to kind of have a different mindset of I need to do everything to I've got so much talent and help around me now. All I need to do is facilitate that puck to those guys. So I guess what I'm saying to kind of con, condense it is just be a facilitator. That's what he's good at. Just facilitate the puck to the rest of the talented players on this team.
Do you think that's a coaching issue?
I think to start, because Jake Sanderson wasn't ready to be that guy and Jacob Chikrin hadn't come in yet. So I think to start, yeah, DJ Smith is probably telling Thomas Chabot, we need you to do these things. And that's something that transition may take time. And maybe we saw some of those growing pains, but hopefully they get it figured out this season because it is a big change. It's a massive change for Chabot.
And I'm just looking at the fact that he blocked 30 more shots than he did last year.
Yep.
And it's just like that has to be the coach telling him, no, like you don't just jump that high for when you're playing less. Like to me, that kind of is peculiar. Final question on Thomas Chabot, Pilsy. Who do you start him with at training camp next year? Because this is a guy who's had to carry his partner year over year over year, and now it's going to be his first training camp where he doesn't even have the threat of Nikita Zaitsev being on his pair.
The threat of Nikita Zaitsev. Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at natural stat trick right now, and yeah, Thomas Chabot played 256 minutes with Nikita Zaitsev last season, a Corsi for percentage of 46.
Shocker.
Yeah, Ross, I think I'm with you in this, and I believe you want him playing with Jacob Chikrin, which is where I think that pair should go. And they only played 35 minutes together, but they had a Corsi percentage of 58.33, so much improved. So yeah, I'd like to see a second pair of Thomas Chabot and Jacob Chikrin.
Second pair.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. I like that. Well, last year he played a lot with Artem Zub as well, 468 minutes. Artem Zub was the most common partner for Thomas
I
Chabot.
didn't love them eye test wise. I know the Corsi numbers are okay, but it just felt with the eye test, Shabbat and Zubs should have worked out, but in my mind, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem like it was working.